generation model. Let's all click on our little, got it. All right. So we're going to jump straight in talking about one of my favorite models from MREA, the lead generation model. If there's anyone who's somewhat new to Keller Williams, or if you haven't read MREA, or if you haven't read it in a while, I just want to let you know that the lead generation model itself is very clearly outlined, pages 133 to 152. So if you grab your MREA this weekend, that would be a great thing to go ahead and jump in and reread it, even based on what we're going to talk about today. My goal with this series, so by the way, if you're here today or you're listening to this recording, my plan is for the next 4 Fridays at noon Pacific time, I'm just going to break down one particular model from the 4 core models of MREA. These are open for anyone. I invite you, send this invitation to your team leader, your productivity coach, your downline. Wouldn't that be great if everyone in your downline started selling more houses? So feel free to share this. It is an open call that you could share with anyone. All right, so we are going to jump in. How many of you think that all I'm going to talk about today is how to lead generate? Show of hands. Well, we're going to talk about more than that. We are really actually today in the first major part of this call, we're going to focus on the actual business structure of the business model and how you can take the goal that you have set for 2022 and you can run the math for your lead generation model. So it's going to be a little bit bigger picture than just how to lead generate. And then at the end of the call, we're going to go over some of those best practices for lead generating. Does that sound good with everyone? Hopefully, yes, because I'm not changing it now anyway. Why do I ask that? Why do you ask something if you're not going to change it? Well, that's what you're here for. If you're on the wrong airplane and this is not your flight destination, time to get out now. All right, let me share my screen. And yes, I can share this Google Sheet with all of you. So you'll be able to reference back to what we're discussing today without necessarily having to hunt through the video to find the information. So I've been inspired lately that we all need to think bigger. My team this year that will close the most sales is going to close somewhere between 410 and about 425 sales. And that's pretty cool. Go Moats team, Austin, Texas. We started talking about 1,000 sales. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be fun today to outline and illustrate the model using 1,000 sales as the number that we all discussed together? Now, of course, I'd encourage you to have your calculator open and a notepad handy. Feel free as we're doing this to customize it to you right as we go through the different items. Who thinks it'd be pretty cool to sell 1,000 houses? All right.
Do that in California?
You can do that in California. Yes.
Okay.
There are some challenges. There's certain markets where it's a little bit of a challenge, but yes, and we can talk about what would the pathway be to do that. All right, so 7. Does anyone know the importance or the significance of the number 7 in terms of what we're discussing today?
No.
Okay. Average consumers, meaning all of us, I'm looking at all of you here in the gallery and myself in the video camera. We typically will not even be able to remember more than 7 brands of anything. So I'm going to use a common example. Right now, unmute yourselves and in the chat or shouting out, what are 7 brands of toothpaste?
Okay. Crest, Sensodyne,
Pepsodent,
Tom's.
Yeah, that organic one.
Yep.
Arm and Hammer.
Oh, very good.
Point made.
Okay, there we go. Okay, and all of us use toothpaste all the time. There's billions of dollars spent in toothpaste advertising, right? So, and so sometimes I share that with someone and they're like, what does that have to do with lead generation? What that has to do with lead generation is you are competing for mind share. You're competing to be one of the realtors that for a large group of people, when someone says, hey, what realtors do you know? You want to be Colgate, Crest, or I forgot what the third one was. Sensodyne, right? So you want to be Colgate, Crest, or Sensodyne. So if you are looking to understand the importance of 42 touches in your 42 touch campaign, because I'll tell you, you guys know, I tell it like it is. So many people, and that's too much. I don't want to be annoying. I would be in there. My clients wouldn't like that. Yeah, you know, like all this stuff. It's backed by data, not in real estate, of consumer behavior. So in the current climate, 42 impressions or touches across a broad group of people on a consistent basis has the potential to make you Colgate, Crest, or Sensodyne for those people. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes, absolutely.
Very
So
much.
I want all of you, if you're like, "Look, if someone called me 3 times a year, I would think that was weird." No, you wouldn't. You'd probably get more insurance or open an Edward Jones account or buy a Jaguar. 3 examples in my own life because someone called me repeatedly. I never sat there and went like, what? Why are they calling me again? How dare they? How dare they call me? Didn't do that. So I just wanted to address that right up front, because I do coach a few people that are wicked good at like very nuanced, and nearly everyone is getting between 42 and 50 touches, and there's personalization. But as a whole, again, I tend to attract a lot of high Ds and a lot of bottom line oriented go-getters. And we rely too heavily on our ability to go out there and make it happen. And we deny ourselves and our teams the benefit of the inbound business that would come as a result of having a strong lead gen model that is working unmets as well as mets, and that is active with income producing activities that are voice to voice and face to face, enhanced by passive with the majority of the 42 touch campaign. So I wanted to address that right off the bat. I want all you guys to be Colgate, Crest, or Sensodyne. I'm a Sensodyne user. What do you guys use? In the chat, I want to know what toothpaste you use. Put it in there. Okay. All right. So we'll get into more nitty gritty. I wanted us all to be on that same page. I have a little breakdown of this in here again, because if you are thinking about this later, I wanted you to at least have that information. Gary does talk about this on page 133 in MREA as well. That number has not changed to any significant level in the last 20 years. So this is still the number that would be used, and we have checked that to see if consumer behavior had changed. By the way, consumer behavior does change. How many of you have been with Keller Williams for so long, I can raise both hands and a foot, that you remember when it was a 33 touch campaign? Anyone remember that? Well, the reason that it's 44 is the brainiacs at KWRI, they're constantly analyzing consumer behavior, response, engagement, and conversion. And that's why that number changes. So it went from 33 to 36. I think for a hot minute, it was like 38. Now it's 42. And that is it is all data driven. Okay. I don't coach a lot of high analyticals. I know though that you guys, a lot of you want to know that things are based on real data. This isn't just a number. Hey, I got a great idea. Let's make all the agents, let's pick a number. Bingo ball, 42. It's not like that. It's very data driven. You guys probably know that Gary's personality profile, he is an extreme DC. So he's a U. So if any of you that know that profile, believe me, anything that is done at this level is backed by analytics. Any high C, it's all data. Next time you're watching him speak, if you didn't know he was a DC, you're going to watch him speak and you're like, oh yeah, I see it now, because he really is. All right, so let's dive in. We're in a customer service business that is also a numbers game. I've been around long enough. I know a lot of people hear numbers game and they immediately think of it as a negative thing. Oh, well, I don't want to just play a numbers game and just throw people on the wall and see who sticks. Here's the reality. The quality leads we all want. Are you more likely to find the quality leads if you have quantity? Or are you more likely to find the quality leads in a lower quantity?
Higher quantity.
Correct. In our coaching calls, you guys hear me talk about critical mass, or that's not enough to create the critical mass needed to fill that pipeline with the quality that we want. And that's why this comes up. And that's why increasing lead generation and having a specific lead generation model is going to be so critical, especially as we move into 2022. We just don't know what is around the corner. Not that we ever do, but we usually have some idea, but we certainly don't right now. All right, so let's jump in. So 90% of our business comes from 5 sources or less. And this really backs up that concept that you hear Gary talk about all the time, where you want to have 3 main listing lead sources that you know with some level of predictability that if you work your plan, you will get listing leads from it. And you want to have 2 that are in development. Many of you have heard or participated in what I call the swimming pool call. If you're not familiar with the swimming pool concept as it relates to this, put that in the chat and I'll dig up that recording and I'll send it to you. But it's a really good way to look at your time management and how you're spending time in these different sources and making sure that they're performing at a level where you'll achieve the goal, okay? So let's just break it down even further. So lead generation is an effective model for identifying potential clients. So lead generation, identifying potential clients. Notice I have no source on there because for all of you, depending on where you are in your business, what resources are available for you. I have clients where all 3 of their top sources are completely different. So the source doesn't matter. It's just being effective and having a way of identifying potential clients / leads and doing that on a weekly basis. So you identify enough leads every work week to achieve the goal. Lead follow-up is that effective model for converting the leads to clients. And then a lead itself is an identified potential client with a when, a how, and a why. I don't know why I said that in different order than is typed. The beauty of the brain. So, a lead, they have that. Those are 3 criteria that many people use to say, what is a lead? For those of you that are following the incredible, game-changing leads identified per week future client process, you would add on that a lead for that formula is someone that has said they want to buy or sell in 2022. If you aren't familiar with that process, also put that in the chat and I will get that to you. Any questions? Are we clear on all of this? And are we clear that 90% of your business comes from that, from 5 sources or less? And that's why it's critical to know. Look, I get it. I know when I'm annoying you guys. Sometimes on your calls, I'll be looking at your active, pending, and closed, or I'll be looking at where the business came from and there's missing sources. And I'm like, hold on a minute. Now, where did the Joneses come from that are buying Primrose? And I know, I see your faces. You're like, I don't remember. Well, that's why this is so critical, is we need to know what those 5 sources are that are actually bringing you business right now. Okay. So most of you are really good at that, but there'll be 1 or 2 missing. And I'm like, where'd that come from? Where'd it come from? Capture it right when you get the lead. All of you are running big enough businesses that if you don't put down, open house, right when it happens, 3 weeks later, so much has happened both at work and in your life, you might not remember. So just capture it right at the time. Okay. So now I want to jump to this. That was the 90% factor. Here's the 6% factor. 6% of your database will either buy real estate, sell real estate, lease real estate in the coming 12 months. And that is Mets and unmets. This is a broad-based, big data-backed number. Any group of any group of people, we know that 6% of that group will do something in real estate in the next 12 months. So all of you can do this math right now. So that means if you have 1,000 people in your database, 6% of that is 60, depending on if your lead generation is strong enough that you identify those 60 and you convert at a 50% rate, that should give you 30 transactions. Now that's being somewhat generous, because the likelihood of finding all 60 before they've done something is pretty low. But just for simplicity, I wanted to put it this way. So you can do the math for yourself right now. If you don't know the exact number in your database, that's your homework this week. Find your number, use an estimate, but go ahead and take your estimated number in your database, multiply it by 0.06. What's that number? Did you close half of that number in deals in the last 12 months from your database? I do coach a couple of heavy database people where the answer is probably yes. I've looked at a lot of your charts, and some of it would be no. By the way, this is a minimum. Our goal through our 42 touch campaign is to get somewhere between 8% and 12% return in a combination of those particular people in the database doing something themselves or referring us to someone. So this is a minimum. So if you're not hitting that minimum, a couple things could be going on. You don't have enough people in the database, again, to like have critical mass. So maybe you hit the 50% of the 6%, but you only have 200 people in the database. So it's like 4 deals. That's not going to build a big business, right? And no, I didn't do that math, so that could have been the wrong number. The other possibility is you have 5,000 people in your database, but you only talk to 50 of them with any regularity, and there's not consistency in touches and impressions going out to the rest of the group. So you're not capturing that business. But I would love it if this coming week, if each of you could run these numbers for yourself, and on your call next week, if we could talk about this on your call, I think it could really guide you in some GPS activities, or prioritizing that 42 touch campaign, or as I'm doing with one client right now, really reevaluating the 42 touch campaign. I have one client who shall remain nameless that has actually been executing on a 42 touch campaign, and yet we're not getting the results, and the relationships it's predominantly Mets. So, but I feel like if you guys look at this, it's going to give us a good indication of like, oh yeah, that's already strong. Let's make it stronger. Or wow, we're leaving business on the table. Does that sound like you guys up for doing that for yourself? Does everyone get it? Everyone gets this conceptually, right?
Yes.
Any questions specifically about this 6% before we move ahead?
I have a question about the touches. Can I ask it now?
You can. I'm going to go into great detail on the touches in a couple slides, but ask it now
Sure, the question is the quality of the touches, I guess.
So yeah, we're gonna go in. I'm gonna go into what do you do with unmets? What do you do with mets? Yeah,
Thank
so we're getting into that. All right, so those are two factors we want to look at. One last thought that I just didn't mention on that 90%. You want to make sure that you're spending the bulk of your time in the sources that are already producing and figure out how do we get more out of that, or is it already maxed out? And everything we do is math, people, right? So I have formulas where we can run the results you have from any given source, and then we can see, well, is it already maxed at capacity, or is there still room to get more? And if it's maxed at capacity, great. We're going to set that a little bit on autopilot, and we're going to leverage someone to take it over. And then you're going to develop all right, well, where's more diamonds under my feet that I can develop? That would be no. Okay. But I don't think I'm coaching many people that have maxed out in a particular source yet, but it doesn't mean it's not out there, because it does take a little bit of analyzing to figure that out. So we're going to start getting into some of the touches now. And I know we've kind of gone away from saying mets and unmets. It's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. So it's going to come up, deal with that. So it used to be that with unmets that were entering your database in your world, you would do an 8x8. You would customize your 8x8s based on whether they were a lead that was going to do something soon, or just someone that you had met that you wanted to add to your database. And you would do the 8x8 first. And then everyone remember, we do a 12 direct. And the 12 direct was predominantly passive marketing. And you would do that. It was also a way to try to get the attention of builders. You would do a 12 direct. Well, again, as they analyze data and consumer behavior, we do know that that number is now 19. Okay. So it is no longer 12. If you do 12, you are not going to get the return you desire. And it could turn out to be a waste of time and money. Okay. So know that any marketing you're doing to unmets, you got to have at least 19 touches in the year in order to get the return that you would like to have. You don't have to do an 8x8. I have a lot of clients that do an 8x8 specifically on people that are leads, but can you all hear me?
Mhm.
Okay. But they do not do the 8x8 on someone that is not a lead, but they want the database. They just put them straight into the 19 Connect, wherever that may be at that course in the year. The 19 Connect is based on the calendar year. So just you figure out what it's going to be for the year. You meet me in July, you add me to the database. I don't get what you sent in January. I just get whatever you're sending out next in July. Okay. It's a river that keeps flowing. The 8x8 is not. The 8x8 is these particular things happen one touch 8 weeks in a row. And it starts, step one starts when you meet me and you add me in. So there's a logical progression, and then you graduate them from the 8x8 into the 19 direct, or if they're a strong lead, into the 42 touch. Any questions around that? No? All right, 42, and the technical phrase, 42 to convert. Of course, you all know, I always just call it 42 touch campaign. I think they did that because people are like, touch sounds weird. Well, I don't care. All right, so with the 42 touches, it's so the 19 to connect, that's one way. You're sending them postcards, evidence of success, a Dunkin' Donuts card, whatever. You're doing that stuff, and it doesn't really matter if they re-engage with you. The goal with the 42 touch, you do want it to be more interactive. You do want to do more bold 100s or reverse bold 100s or Popeyes, or a small event or a big event, or, like, but you want there to be, you want phone calls, you want two-way communication, even if it's digital. The goal is for them to reply back to you, so you want, there's more of a focus on the interactivity on the 42 touch than on the 19 connect. The other thing is you want it to be value-based. And when I say that, you want to, when you're calling people or when you're sending them something, the majority of the time, you want it to have some value for the person that's receiving it. So that's very obvious in terms of a pop-by or a pie giveaway, or you're dropping off apple cider with cinnamon sticks and a cinnamon broom, or anything you're doing like that. Obviously, you're giving them something of value. And then there's the other ones that are real estate related, like sending a preliminary CMA value or an updated home value to everyone in their home anniversary month, sending them information about homesteading if that's something in your state, or checking to see if they want to check the assessed value of their property for tax purposes. So you want like some value in a lot of the interactions that you're doing with them. Introducing them to great insurance people or wealth managers, or making sure they have their will in place and their properties held in trust if that's something they want. So it's not just, hey, who wants to buy or sell? Because I don't want it. You don't want it to be all about you. You want it to be about them and interactive. And you want to open the door for talking about real estate. I have to slip this in. I can't do this without slipping it in. Remember that from this moment forward, when anyone says to you, how are you? Your answer is always about real estate. It's not about you. It's about real estate and you in real estate. That is them knocking on the door and you're opening it and walking through. Obviously, if it's your mom, I guess you could tell her about you, but even her, throw some real estate in there too. So forward, based as the relationship develops. So I'm going to state it. I probably should have typed it out because I realized not everyone knows what forward stands for. So forward is family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. So if I'm calling through past clients in Sphere and vendors, right? So past clients, I'm going to call them. And when I start the conversation, I'm going to start from that forward basis. So I'm going to ask about family, or maybe I saw something on social media and they got a new boat. That's recreation. Hey, saw you guys out on Lake Havasu in your new boat. That looks really cool. Tell me more about that. Always end, if you do share something like, I saw your fill in the blank, new puppy, boat, kitten, kid, grandkid, whatever you fill it in with, always end with a question. How's that feeling? Oh my gosh, how's that going? What made you do that? But come from curiosity and ask a question to keep the conversation going. But with your 42 connect, 42 touch, the more nuanced you can become in terms of what you know about them and weave that into the opening of your conversation. Can you see how that's very engaging? And it lets them know that you know who they are as an individual. Does that make sense? So the 42 touch itself is sort of a blanket for everyone, but then you guys are so skilled, you're going to weave in personalization as you're making calls or sending a note card or doing a social media touch. Okay. So cultivation, obviously, if you're cultivating, so cultivating to me means someone from your 19 direct actually reached out to you and said like, aren't you that realtor guy? Great. Okay. Well, that's when very quickly you want to shift to being very interactive, find out what they need and deliver what they need, and then even more, right? So any questions around the difference? So 19 connect is to unmets, recently mets who are not leads, and future possible referral partners. 42 touch is for your premier group, sphere of influence, and I have a list of this, so I may as well just go to the slide. But is there any, do you all get the difference between the two? Are we good on that? Good. Okay. So,
Bridget, I do have one question.
Yes.
You mentioned that 6%, you could sell 6% of your database. As you look at the people that are in the Mets versus unmets, or the 19 or the 21 or 20 or 42, do you have any statistics around each of those?
Anna Kruger does, and I can get those from her. I do not know. I don't like to say things unless I know it rock solid. I don't know them by heart.
And it's just more
Keen-
curious. It's not a huge deal.
But no, I mean, it's pretty interesting. I like looking at it. So Keen, can you put a reminder down next week to get the, Anna has incredible detail. I've shared it with some of you, Jim DiPaola and a few others that were launching ISAs. She has incredible amounts of data on what's the pickup rate in different sources. If you dial 100 numbers in different sources, how many people will answer, and then what you can expect from that. So I'll get that from Anna, and I'll share that next week when we're doing the next model call. Okay. That's a good question, actually. It's and I'll add it to this information. So now I just wanted to get into like, all right, well, what does this all look like actually? 19 Connect, frankly, there are some people that straight up do 19 mailings, and they'll do 12 postcards and 7 note cards or letters. So it's all mail, and they do it, just very, it's good quality stuff, but that's not where you're spending your time and effort. Those of you that do large events, which I know post-COVID, who's doing that right now? But you can also, there are people that do family fun fairs. They do shred events. They do bulk haulaways. They'll do something where it's cost effective that you could invite everyone, invite them, especially if they're local and, and you've had some level of connection or a little spark. Great, invite them to those. If you don't do large events, it's probably not worth the spend to have them come to that. So that's just an idea. And by the way, I've got to fix the math on this, but I just wanted to give you ideas. A couple things we know is that 4 phone calls per year, 4 voice-to-voice or face-to-face communications per year is the magic minimum where you will start getting that return of either identifying the 6% themselves or getting the referrals from their inner circle and the people they know. That's a place where I think all of us, a lot of you guys were just rock stars in terms of hitting the 4 times a year. And I'm not making an excuse, but I do think COVID threw a weird spin on that. And I think all of us could agree as a group, 2022, we're all back on the 4 and having that really strong commitment to, in your premier group, that you talk to them or see them 4 times a year. Then you could do 26 by email, maybe like a biweekly email. Some of you have monthly newsletters that go out, plus you send out one quirky or, of note hyper local email. I would not, in my opinion, and I know the Amazon freaks and the Zappos people disagree with me, but I would not make any of the touches out of the 42. I wouldn't make anything more than 26 email. But that's, I do admit that could be some personal bias or filter coming through from me. You could do touches around events. I don't know if Jess Williams is on, but she's having great touches, inviting people to events. Roscoe Group, incredible amount of touches, making sure that you're calling beforehand, emailing the invitation or mailing the invitation, texting the reminder the day of, and then post-event, calling to thank everyone who attended and calling to say, sorry, we missed you to everyone who did not. If you want to make your life easier and talk to way more people, more often next year, that's definitely a way to do it. This next one is also proven with big data, just like the 4 voice-to-voice and face-to-face. 4 pieces in the mail at a minimum, regular old school mail. Also, there's a direct correlation to the 4 voice-to-voice, face-to-face, and 4 in the mail, that you will have a high likelihood of identifying at least the 6%. Okay. And then this last one, you have 6 direct social media engagements. Now, what I mean by that, and boy, those of you that are doing the YouTube stuff, we know social media is weird because not everyone sees everything. Okay. So you could do a beautiful post for Mother's Day and put it out, and not all your mothers will see it. Not everyone's going to see it. Right. So when we talk about counting as specific 42 touches in this campaign, it's not your posts that count as the touch. It's when you comment on a post from your premier group. So, and by the way, by you, it could also be someone who sounds like you posting on your behalf. But a lot of you I know are able to very efficiently go in. You know me, what do I love more than anything? A timer. So you can set a timer for, 20 minutes, go in, happy birthday. Wow, the puppy's so cute. Oh my gosh, I can't believe that little Johnny's already going into middle school. So you just go through and go through your feed, put a star on any, by the way, put a star on all your past clients and all your orphans that you have the luxury of being on social media with. That way, guess what? In your feed, you see all their stuff first. So then you can set a timer and boom, just crank out comments. Comments, by the way, are way more powerful than likes. So even putting a fast, stupid, love this or whatever, that's more engaging than just a like. But if you start doing that on your past clients, sphere of influence, main referral partners, and orphans that you have connected with on social media, that's what we're going to count as the social media touches. The other ones, which I think I must have gone below the screen, would be texting that's 2-way, or social media messaging, whether it's WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger or LinkedIn, wherever you do it, where the 2 of you have a private conversation that's 2-way. So the digital ones. So again, am I saying, oh, here, everyone go do this? No, I just wanted to give an example of the breakdown without necessarily going into a full 42 touch campaign. If you guys really want your 42 touch to be extraordinary this coming year, I highly recommend that you watch the 1-hour video about where to start, how to do it, how to have a backbone of your social media presence. Even though it's not really counting in the touches, it's very important if you want to go that route. But it's a really good breakdown in about an hour, and it's going to conceptually show you how your 42 touch campaign can reflect your personality, your team's personality and culture, and you can make it very engaging. Okay. Any questions just about these examples? No, and by the way, this is purely an example. I'm waiting for the text messages. No, I don't do events. Okay, great. That's fine. This was purely like a for example, right? So if there's something on here you don't do other than phone calls and at least 4 mailings, change it out with what you do. The point is have an awareness level around how many touches there are, and make sure that you're not shortcutting the 2 that we can track specifically to results. Okay. Got a thumbs up to go to the next one. All right. All right. So now we're going to talk a little bit about, well, who gets what? Most of you have already identified your top 20 VIP group. If you have not, go ahead and do that this week. Quickly. And by the way, even if you have done it, right now is a good time to review it. So even if you have one, do what I'm about to say and reflect on everyone in there. So for a top 20 VIP group, it's 1 person per slot. So, put MGMT on, have your coffee and water, a legal pad, no distractions, and then just write the numbers 1 through 20 on a legal pad. And without looking at your phone or looking at nothing except that legal pad, start writing down who are the people, one individual per line, that are the most critical in your inner circle in bringing business. And you want to get as many of the 20, you want to get as close to 20 as possible without any prompting from anywhere. You want to include past clients who've done more than one sale with you and referred more than one person to you. You want to include maybe 1 or 2 of your absolute best referral partners as vendors. All your other vendors should be in your vendor program. So don't clog up your VIP group with all vendors. If there's a particular agent who has sent you more than 4 referrals from out of area or even local, you might have a commercial agent that feeds you a lot of business. Great, put them in there. You want to include any of you that have farms, or even if you technically don't have a farm, but you have a neighborhood where you do a lot of business. If you're lucky enough to have found the governor of that neighborhood, boom, put them in there. And the last category is people that absolutely love you, whether you like them or not. So the example I give is, you're unloading groceries at Trader Joe's, and all of a sudden you hear your name from across the parking lot. Lisa, oh my God, Lisa. And they come running over and you're like, oh, why didn't I pick that other cashier? Look, we're all human. I just tell it like it is. We all have that. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? And you turn around, oh my gosh, it's so good to see you. Put those people in there, because if they love you that much, they'll refer business to you. So we want to, and by the way, you might find that as you interact with them more, you actually like them more. And there was some weird filter going on in your head that didn't even run. And by the way, they might just be annoying and you still don't like them. But you want that top 20 group. And it's, again, no more than 20, no less than 20. And when you're filling that out, a lot of people get stumped right around between 10 and 14. And they're like, I don't know, I can't think of anyone else. That's when you go to your phone, go to your frequently called, scroll through there. That's when you go to social media, right? So you might need to prompt yourself. It's not a failure if you don't hit 20, but the strongest people in that group are the ones that organically pop into mind for you, okay? And that top 20, you're going to treat differently. That is a whole separate program. We can go into more of that on your coaching call, but make sure you've got your top 20, okay? It is not husbands and wives, by the way. So usually in a couple, there's one that's more influential than the other. And then sometimes there's not. Sometimes it's 2 high eyes in 2 different industries, but that would be 2 lines. They're not on the same line. Any questions about top 20 VIP group? Okay. So then you want at least your next 100. So your next 100, that's all your past clients, all your orphan past clients, particularly in price points and neighborhoods where you want to dominate. You could add more referral partners in there, sphere of influence, the new parents you just met at the PTA meeting, like that, but you want about another group of around 100. So here's what you're going to do in terms of phone calls. And this, some people just do straight DT, D2, and that's fine. And you could tweak it this little bit further if you wanted to. Your top 20 group, you call once a month. They get 1 phone call a month through the year. It could also be 1 pop-by or coffee or lunch, but usually you call or text someone to do that. But it's a specific real estate related conversation once a month. That next 100, you're going to split it into 2 groups of 50. And 1 group of 50 are the even months, and 1 group of 50 are the odd months. And guess what? You call them every other month, whether they're odd or even. Okay. Alex Brandaw he put together a T300. So his T300 is what a lot of you guys call your premier group. There's some different names out there, but that's all of them. That's a lot of people. Those are the people that you call in November for the just so you know conversation. They're the people you call in January for what are your plans in real estate in 2022 conversation. They're the ones where you make sure they get at least 2 personal touches per year about them as a human, like happy 4th of July. With nothing really, your real estate signature, but not a real estate request, and maybe a happy holiday, but at least 2 touches that are not about real estate. Some people that are shooting for high numbers have increased that, and they have a top 600. And if you're thinking about being in this business at least till 2030, if any of you want to double or more than double, if you want to have more business with more time off, make that group bigger. 600 is a pretty good sweet spot of having a continual flow of come list me business and referrals. And if you've got a team, that's where you're getting a lot of those personal referrals to hand to the team members. So anyway, we can talk more about that. Everything we're talking about right here, customize it to where you are and where you want to go. And in your coaching call next week, we'll dive deeper into it. And then, so after these groups, that's where it becomes the rest of the METs or the rest of the database. And so those are people like, open house leads that never did anything, or people you met at a golf expo when you had a booth, or people you met at the horse cutting show that filled out the little raffle, but they never engaged. So the way that breaks down, as this list goes down, you'll spend more money and time at the top, and then you spend less time as you go down. So with that rest of database, we don't want it to be a lot of your time, especially if you're a rainmaker. We want it to be automated. And we also don't want to spend a lot of money really beyond the top 300 to 600. And you spend more money. Like that's another way to figure out your top 20. I'm like, who would you take to dinner and pick up the bill and you wouldn't think twice about it? Like, who would you spend money on that contributes to your business is another way to look at it. So does this give you guys a good concept of where do you start? Rest of database, that's also like old internet leads and the bridal show raffle entries. And yeah, you guys get what that is, right? It's everything other than your premier group, which is that real focus on pipeline leads, past clients, orphan past clients, referring partners, vendors, people that could lead to your business being greater. That's in that top group. Okay. All right, I'm clicking. Unless anyone has a question, I'm going to hit the button. Okay. Here's where it gets fun. This is where we're going to talk about the 1,000, and we're going to talk about it in a little bit of a different manner. Okay. So this is, and as I said, I know we've moved away from METs and unmets. I'll figure it out sometime. It's still ingrained in my head. So let's say you want to do 1,000 sales next year and you're in growth mode. Meaning you didn't sell 979 last year and, oh, I do 1,000. No, like, you did 300 or 400 or 250 or 100, and you want to make that big jump. Okay. So this is for growth mode, because by the way, the formula would be different if you just wanted to sustain what you're doing. That formula is different than for growth. Okay. So we would want to, for this particular model, what we're assuming is they're going to get 65% of the total units closed out of their MET category and out of their MET database. That's going to include nearly everyone in the database with the exception of internet leads or sign calls. So even those examples I gave you, if you worked a bridal show, a golf expo, a ton of you do horse shows, you met those people. So if you had a face-to-face, they're in your METs. I don't care if it was one time. So we're going to look at 65% of the 1,000 coming from the METs. And then we're going to plan to have 35% of the 1,000 come from unmets. Now the unmets, that's going to be a combination as well of the people in your database that meet those criteria I told you, like sign calls or voicemails that were left or internet leads or, fill in that blank. But the biggest part of the unmets, that's where you're going to want to, with purpose and intentionality, increase the number of people that you know. So that's where I was talking to some of you this past week about, can you start a wine club? What's your pick one of your interests or hobbies. And if you're in an area where people are getting together again, consider either joining an existing group or starting your own. If any of you drive, there's so many car groups, hobby groups, wine groups, foodie groups, karaoke groups, whatever, hiking, fill it in. That's one item. Another, join a networking group. Maybe it's time for you to join BNI or create your own business to business referral. As Brenda Piper is doing, by the way, even if you're not using Lolo, if you haven't watched the video, it's just half an hour where Brenda Piper outlines how she's meeting new people specifically through local business owners. It is phenomenal. It's phenomenal. So, so maybe that's your intentionality of having that featured business of a month and what you're going to do with that business owner to get in front of their inner circle. But that's what you're doing with the unmets, is that it's not just the people that are already unmet in your database. It's finding the new. We've got to find, nearly everyone I coach has to grow their database significantly. And by the way, a lot of you guys have pretty good database, but we've got to either we've got to build that number up. I'm sure you all have heard Gary when he's talking about, as our industry changes and as technology changes, it's up to us to put the humanity and the human face back into real estate relationships. And relationship and Met database will become more and more critical as our industry changes and as technology changes. And then on top of it, we were already in that situation. Throw on quarantine, COVID, and all the extravaganza we've had recently, you can see why relationships are more critical than ever. Okay. So if you notice at the bottom, I put, okay, so I gave this example of 65% and 35%. What I'd like each of you to do is pick your percentage of what you'd like that to be. By the way, for growth, 65 and 35 to have growth is really, that's a really good number. So what I would recommend is look at this past year. And I know you guys are like, I've looked at this past year 10 times already. I don't want to look at it again. Look at it one more time and figure out what percentage of your business came from Mets and what came from unmets, and see what your current percentage is. And then look at, knowing that the gold standard for growth, especially significant growth, is 65-35. And then pick your percentage. So let's say right now you're at 80% Mets, 20% unmets. You might decide, you know what, Bridget, next year I'm going to go for 72-28. Like, so you guys get that. So look at your current, look at that gold standard, wherever you're off kilter with it. I also coach some heavy prospectors. So their percentage is probably like 60% unmet, 40% met. Well, so just look at where you are, look at the gold standard of 65-35, and let's come up with a goal next year where this, to me, it's almost like an overlay of your whole business plan. Let's make sure that the business plan is shooting towards this math as well. I feel like this particular aspect of growth is not always addressed at a deep level with a lot of the business planning we do. So that's why I wanted to make sure we spent some time here. Okay. Delisa is going on a listing appointment. Go get the listing. Everyone give her get the listing. Okay.
Actually, I have 2 today, so yes.
Yes.
Good vibes are
Yes.
appreciated.
Yes. We're all sending the get the listings mojo
You're gonna send this out, right, for the recording? Because this
to
is good
everyone
stuff.
except you. Because now I'm going to be mad you left early. So I'll make sure that you're like blocked from it, but I'll send it to everyone else.
Okay, but you'll be happy with me if I land the listings.
You know, I'm kidding. I like how I
I
think I'm funny. Y'all are out there going like, Bridget better keep that day job. She's not that funny. But
Thank
anyway, get
you.
out there, get those listings, and yes, you'll get the recording and the slides.
Okay,
Okay.
awesome. Thanks.
All right. So any questions around this conceptually? I know sometimes statistics, some people get them right away and others are like, nah. Does everyone get what I'm talking about here? I'm going to go through the example now, but I want to make sure people are getting it. So with this, we're going to sell 1,000 homes. We have decided, because we're going for significant growth, because 420 to 1,000 is more than doubling, right? So that's extreme growth, right? So we know we want to hit that gold standard of 65% coming from METs, 35% from unmets. That breaks down to 650 of the closed transactions will come from METs. That means we have to have at least, at a minimum, 6,500 people in the MET database receiving a 42 to convert touch campaign. And then there's a little side note, newly added METs, as we talked about previously. So those are people that are, you just met them, but they're a lead. They're going to receive an 8x8 prior to being in the 42 to convert program. Old habits die hard. Now, one other little nuance on that. If you have a freshly met lead that's ready to have a listing appointment and a buyer consultation that minute, don't give them the 8x8. The 8x8 is for people that say, hey, we're moving to Texas in June. We'd love to work with you to buy our house. That's where you need to solidify that relationship. If they're going straight into a buyer consultation to go see properties and they're going right into a listing appointment within the next week, they don't need the 8x8. Okay. Now, then we look at it, we say, okay, unmets, 350 of those closed deals are going to come from unmets. That means we need 17,500 people in the unmet database receiving a 19 to connect promotion or program. So does this make sense to everyone? Also, I forgot to make my disclaimer. I'm not good at looking at the chat while I'm presenting. Are there questions in the chat and I'm not seeing them? No? Okay. Is this going to be a slightly different perspective to add on to your business plan that you have put together so far for this year?
Yes, for sure.
Okay, good. All right. Now the next thing. So lead generation, if you really want it to be effective and consistent and have your team buy in and have your own self buy in, you want to create a budget of money and you want to create a budget of time. So just to give the example here, when I looked at this scenario that we just went through, I ended up factoring in some events, emails, promotional things, direct mail. I factored in even CRM, paying a database manager. I factored in a portion of the salary from a database manager. So I did a whole worksheet that was fairly extensive. And I figured that to achieve these 1,000 sales in the MET category, the budget was going to be at least $143,450 for the year, but that was going to cover absolutely everything that we were doing in terms of a 42 touch, everything from that special dinner at a steakhouse with a VIP client to the once a month newsletter that goes out by email. It was going to be around $143,450, paying leverage, everything, right? The unmet campaign came out to about $348,000. Same thing. I looked at it through what percentage of a staff person's time and salary would go towards this program. What would mailings cost? Would it be? I always like to err on the conservative side. So I actually did pricing estimates for postcards and mailing at first class level, not even EDDM, or I just did like, all right, what would it be? So I came to around 348,000. In my experience, and I'm including myself in this, prior to when I joined Keller Williams in 2008. So I was at Remax prior to that. Many of you know I was heavily involved with another coaching company. I ran a profit and loss, and I checked return on investment on my expenses. I did not quite go to this level. I didn't really look at that. And I was a heavy prospector. And probably no surprise to you guys, but I was on the phone and I loved it. So I knew my cost for my auto dialer, my research sources to find phone numbers and data. I knew all that, but I didn't quite budget it in the same way to say, for me to lead generate 4 hours a day, talk to 136 people a week, it will cost this. And I found that when I came to KW and I started doing that, this sounds weird, but when I started identifying what I was spending and why for the Mets and what I was spending and why for unmets, my conversion rates went up. And I really can't track it back. I didn't change my scripting. There was no other change other than that. And I do believe that you stimulate your subconscious in a deeper way, and you make that connection between, wow, when I do this and invest in this, I want to get that return. You also set the expectation of return. But I did have a significant conversion increase. And in the years since, I've never been able to track it back to anything other than creating that specific lead generation budget. Okay. And then the other thing is time. You have got to look at the GPS that's going to focus on income producing activity. And you have to come up with an estimate of how much time will that require from you firsthand, from your EA, from your agents, if you have agents on the team. But you've got to be realistic and include things like logistics and prep time and research and a creative creation process. But you really have to look at how much time will it take each member to achieve what we're putting in our GPS. When we look at some really strong, well thought out, strategic, beautiful GPS, where there's a clear goal, priorities that make sense, because you want to go where you're strong and make it stronger, right? So great, solid priorities. And then we get to the 5 strategies, and I'll start looking at it. And because I'm a closet program manager, so the little wheels in my head are turning almost all the time. You guys didn't know that till we went to Zoom. Now that we're on Zoom, you guys see it happening real time. So you know what I'm talking about. So I'll look at some of these GPS and I'm like, wait a minute, and that would take approximately 64 hours a week, and you only have 1 EA, and that's all leveraged. Like I'll look. So we have to make sure that the time allotted makes sense, and that we buffer, just like we're conservative in our estimates for money we'll spend in terms of buffering on the higher side. We also want to figure out how long things will take based on information from the person doing the work. Because there's one thing I know, that if the rainmakers and the high Ds are saying, oh, that'll take you 30 minutes, and it's really something pretty elaborate. And I think a few EAs are on this call, and I just know, I'm not seeing all your faces, but I know there's a few that are going like, oh, mm-hmm. We think things don't take long. We need the data from our leverage on how long it would take them to do it now. I'm not saying they can't increase their efficiency, but we've got to be realistic on time commitment. In my opinion, that's one of the biggest failures that we see in a GPS. And that is, there's great ideas, there's SMART goals, there's a time frame and a target date, there's a frequency number, like all of it's looking great. And yet when you actually calculate how much time it would take each person involved to complete the work, it's more time than in a given week, especially considering that we're also selling at the same time. I'm happy to help any of you with this. And it's one of my goals as a coach for making sure that anyone that wants explosive growth next year will have it. I think we need to do a time and money analysis, not just a strategy analysis on your GPS. The second reason a GPS would fail, I'm going to give you three. The second reason it would fail is the strategies are not enough to create the critical mass, or they're not SMART goals. There's no target, there's no frequency, there's no specificity on who is doing what with whom, right? So some of the ones, they're like a nice little seedling, but it's not a fully fleshed out GPS. And then the third reason we see GPS fail is you create it, put a lot of time and effort, team works on it, yay, let's go. And then it's printed out with color codes, and then it gets stuck under a pile on your desk. Then that pile gets moved to a shelf because you're going to do a video and you can't have anything on your desk. And then the pile on the shelf gets put into a box of things to go through later. So we want to make sure that your GPS in this coming year becomes a living document that you are looking at on a regular basis. From what I know of Rainmaker behavior, we actually want to designate someone to be the head of GPS review. I think once a month would be good, but it needs to be on the calendar and it needs to be serious. We need to see what's working and what's not on a monthly basis if you want to have an explosive level of growth. One of the ways that we've created that explosive growth with Moat's team is we became really fanatical about that. Okay. And then also institute a strong 15th protocol. So review it every month and have that 15th protocol in place so that you're not letting time go by and letting gaps get created on a monthly basis. Okay. Any questions on this in particular?
I have a question.
Yes.
So the numbers aren't making sense to me in terms of the investment spent on the unmets when the return is so much greater for the Mets. Why wouldn't we be spending more money for them?
Many will. That is legit how the numbers worked out, because if you recall, the database of unmets is 17,600. What was the number again? Right. So the reason that's so high is in this, and this is just an example, but I actually did the worksheet because I really wanted it to be a real number. If you're doing first class mail postcards to 17,500 people 12 times a year, that adds up really fast. And then I factored in that staff that would be running that whole thing, managing that database and cultivating it. But that's why it came out to more. The other thing is, in this particular example, and I guess, you know what, I should have added some of the assumptions made for this example. One of the assumptions made is that it was going to be the Mets was going to be a lot of phone calls and a lot of one-on-ones. So it was more time than money.
Okay.
So that's one of the reasons why. And this too, I just wanted to give like a real example. Yours could be different. So, and if everyone, Kim Spear Realty Group, Northern Virginia, satisfying all your real estate needs in the Northern Virginia area. So the, when I think about your business, it probably would be flipped. But the fun thing is, and my point is, do the math and figure it out and do the full math. Like do the percentages first, then go backwards to figure out, okay, well then how many leads would have to be in that database, and then do the math on what it would cost and just see what it comes out to.
Mhm.
I'll tell you, I was also surprised by that. I did this exercise with another coach and we got pretty hardcore about it. And that was a surprising thing to us as well. When, so anyway, but here's the good thing, like, let's know the numbers. And to me, this is moving beyond, and by the way, I taught MREA business planning up and down California, from Visalia to San Diego, for years, and I love it. So this is not contradicting or saying that's not valuable. I feel that everyone I'm coaching is at the level where you're really taking your business really up a whole nother notch. So like, what are those ways of looking at your business that can help that happen in a quick manner? Knowing this and running this exercise, I believe, would help do that. So that's kind of, but yeah, I mean, good thing that you observed. And that's just how the numbers came out. But a big part of it was there were significantly more first-class mail pieces going out to a way larger group of people than on the Mets. Okay. So then one last thought on the GPS. As I mentioned, it's got to be measurable. You have to know who's doing what. You want, if you have a team, you want people on the team to volunteer. Like if you do a brainstorming session with your GPS, see if someone will step up and say, you know what, I would love to be the head of the unmets communication, whatever it is that's on there. See if they want to step up, but know who's doing what, when, how long it will take them, and what it will cost. And you want to make sure there's a huge focus on income producing activities, particularly for any agent-based activity. So, the assumptions we made with this, and this kind of, I guess, goes in with what we were talking about, that the entire agent count of the team would make 20 contacts per day or 100 contacts per week, every week that they work. That open houses would be consistent with at least a level 5 or above. If you guys don't know what I mean by level 5 open house, save it for when we're done, but we can go into that. Hitting the listing appointments needed per week, every week. So one of the things, like going from, from wherever you are and having a significant growth, we have to get that focus back on having the listing appointments needed per week, every week, and instituting that strong 15th protocol in the event you didn't, and almost being maniacal about a month is not going to end without me doing my listing presentation to the number of people that I know will achieve the goal. A couple other things I could add on that. That's not comprehensive. It was just some of them. Any of you that want to have major growth, you also want to look again at the leads identified per week worked, having those 10 leads identified per unit closed, and then making sure that you're hitting that every week. But it's adding in a little bit more than what we're going to cover. I just wanted to go deeper into this model. So I hope this is meaningful for you guys. So any questions on what we have covered so far? Can I get a few ahas about this, what we have covered so far? I'd like to have at least 3 people share something that is either new or they had not thought about in many years and like, oh yeah, I want to do that. Give me some feedback on what we've covered.
I have one.
Okay.
I realized that I have to get more detailed on planning, like you said, to decide how much money you're spending with your Mets and your unmets. I kind of just wing it, and when I think it's a good idea, I do it, or maybe I'll get to do it next year, but I really don't have a plan for it.
Mm-hmm. So good. So we could look at that.
Mm-hmm.
Kim, I was thinking more about what you said as well. What if we created that GPS? Let's say that we ran this was your plan. And then we saw like, holy, we're going to spend, more than double on unmets that we're spending on Mets. We don't want to do that. Well, great. Rewind, back up, and reshift. I feel like it's an insight that is going to provide additional information on how to have a plan that is going to come together rock solid. All right, 2 more. What did I say at the end of the last call? I know I can win staring contests and be quiet longer than any of you. I'm the 4th out of 5 Irish kids. No one is taking anything else away from this. You guys are just making me want to cry. No insight, no nothing. You all are
Hey,
just sitting
Bridget,
there
it's
like,
Steve.
this is all stuff I heard before. Yeah. Yes. Steve.
Bridget, it's Steve. So I need to go through. We've segmented our database pretty well, but I need to go through and top grade it. Haven't done it in a year, I think. So as I'm doing my business plan, I need to go through and top grade that as part of the business planning.
Okay.
And make sure the people in the right buckets are where they need to be.
Perfect. That is excellent. All right. I need one more before we can do Q&A and wrap up and talk about, okay. So Gina's got one in the chat. So, okay. Gina says she needs to add a couple of personal Ford style touches into all of the real estate theme of her 42 touch campaign. Yeah. I mean, it's highly beneficial. It keeps you from appearing as the real estate robot, or everything's real estate. You got to add in that couple little just human to human acknowledgement and touch. All right. Well, I hope, was this helpful? There's a couple of, let me grab one thing. So as I was looking at the rereading the chapter in MREA on this, and the last couple of thoughts I want to add, and then we'll wrap up. If you're done, you can hop off. If you're someone that wants to have a breakthrough in your lead generation, I've got a little how to lead generate slide. But remember, it's a numbers game, and change your perspective on numbers game if you have a negative perception of that phrase. We can talk about that on your call. And just imagine that it's a numbers game that you're playing at an incredibly high level. To me, it's the difference of, so like a hobbyist real estate agent who gets their license in case their friends and family buy something and they enjoy going to Red Day, but they're not really running a business. They're doing real estate that comes their way. It's like they're playing putt-putt. Everyone that's on this call, and nearly everyone I coach, you guys are all at like PGA level, but you're playing like masters level golf. So just understand that this is something you can master, and either change the name of it and tell me what the new name is, or change your perception of it if that's an issue for you. And then the last 3 thoughts, and this is straight up from Gary, as well as a couple of other real estate mentors that I've had. I'm coming up, by the way, next month is my 23rd anniversary in real estate full-time. Number 1, we are an industry that is prospecting based and marketing enhanced. You will have the biggest business with both. You will have the highest profit margin when you approach it as prospecting based and marketing enhanced. Lead generation based, relationship based, could fill in the blank, but you guys understand what I'm talking about. Having that 42 touch campaign that has human interaction, okay? And then enhanced by the marketing. You want to set up a database and you want to feed it regularly. You guys saw the numbers. Now, I only have one client that wants to shoot for 1,000 as of right now. Maybe after this, you guys will be like, that sounds fun. Let's go do it. And that'll be a fun phone call next week. But, really understand 2 numbers. How many people do we need in the database to achieve the goal? And how many leads do we need to identify from all sources on a consistent basis to achieve the goal? So we've got to feed it. And by feeding it, I mean meeting and adding new people all the time. Okay. And then 3, we want to systematically market. So as much as possible, we want the 42 touch to be automated. We want smart plans dripping on people. We want low gifts going out by email, whether you're in town or not. We want, you make as much of it. We want that. If you do newsletters, newsletter reflects your personality and tone, style, and voice, and yet it's automated to the point where it's happening whether you're there or not. So I just wanted to end with those 3. You guys shared your 3 with me. I wanted to add those 3. I hope this was helpful. If you feel complete, you can hop off now. If you have some questions, we can do some Q&A. And then I do have that slide for people that would like to go over how to lead generate in a better way than you may be doing right now with efficiency. Okay. Any questions? No. All right, who's ready to sell 1,000 houses now? Dang, I thought everyone was going to unmute and say, I'm ready. Let's go. I thought it made the illustration pretty straightforward. So obviously take this math, put your unit goal and run the numbers for yourself. Okay. This is super fun. I am going to make myself stop because I could talk about these things all day. And thank you for coming. And I'm going to go ahead and cover some best practices for lead generation. Okay.
Thanks, Bridget.
All right. Talk to you guys later.